Use headphones for best experience.
I used to moderate strangers' nightmares for a living. This turned from a nightmare to terror when I heard the first tap from behind the freshly painted wall. Derek will swear he never meant to hurt anything that breathed. He will swear to the detective, to the neighbor with the tea towels on her balcony, to his mother on the phone from 2 time zones away, that he is gentle when he is sober. He will say it in the calmest voice he can manage, like he's narrating a documentary about someone else. He will almost believe it. But this begins before the swearing and the blue lights, before the fresh paint had time to dry. On the night it started to break, his thumb smelled like gin and cat food. He'd been doing late shifts again, moderating videos for a platform that never sleeps. He would come home at 2 or 3, eyes burning, brain humming with things he wasn't supposed to remember. Elena said the graveyard hours were turning him into someone else. Maybe she was right. Maybe the aluminum taste under his tongue was guilt. Or maybe it was the energy drinks. Either way, he came home with a 6-pack of hard seltzer and a bag of freeze-dried salmon bites for Cosmo, the black rescue cat Elena had brought home, just for a week, until we find someone. Cosmo had stayed. Cosmo always stayed. Cosmo watched. In the beginning, Derek liked the cat. Cosmo was clean, precise, a quiet shadow that threaded between their legs while Elena laughed. Elena laughed often. She had a way of making their 1-bedroom with the green door feel bigger than it was. Plants in repurposed jam jars along the sill, a blue throw over the hand-me-down couch, a jasmine candle she only lit when she wanted the night to behave. Elena worked at the dental clinic down the street and came home smelling like mint and peroxide. She had a low tolerance for cruelty and clutter. Derek would kiss her temple and say he was trying. Sometimes he meant it. The night in question was a Friday sliding into Saturday. They had eaten noodles from cartons, shared the last clean pair of chopsticks, and argued about money without saying the word. Elena asked if he could please not drink before he slept. He said it helped him turn off. Cosmo batted a twist tie across the floor and then jumped to the counter like it belonged to him. The cat nosed open the cabinet and pawed at the bag of treats. Derek laughed and pushed the cat down. The cat jumped back up. The bag split. Salmon cubes scattered like hail. Maybe the urge was nothing more than momentum. Hand already moving, wrist already flicking, but he swatted harder than he meant to. Cosmo slammed into the cupboard door, slid down the cabinets, and disappeared under the table. "Hey," Elena said sharply, "what is wrong with you?" He said he didn't know. He said it was just a tap. He said the cat needed boundaries. He said a cat doesn't have feelings the way people do. The look Elena gave him was something he hadn't earned. "Everything has feelings," she said. He drank one hard seltzer, then another. Elena collected the scattered treats one by one. Cosmo did not come out. They did not speak for 30 minutes. The silence in the apartment was not empty. It bulged. Derek's phone lit with push notifications. Videos he would have to review the next night. A friend's meme. A missed call from his mother. He turned the screen face down and stared at his reflection in the window. The city glowed like a constellation of unslept thoughts. Behind him, Elena opened the refrigerator and closed it like a question. Cosmo returned at last, tail low, and sniffed Derek's shoe. Derek reached down and said he was sorry. The cat flinched and bolted. Elena exhaled at a volume he could measure. "We're done with tonight," she said. "Please go to bed." "I live here," he said, and didn't recognize the child in his voice. "Then act like it." He should have stopped there. He did not. The old room filled itself with all the fights they had not had. He said words he had saved for other arguments and other people. Elena set the chopsticks down like a gavel and said, softly, "Don't make me afraid of you." The softness hurt worse than shouting. He stood up too fast. The table skittered. The cheap wine glass tipped and fractured on the tile. Later he would count. 3 distinct sounds. Glass. A thud. Silence. He didn't mean to shove her. He meant to make space with his hands. Elena took a step back into a chair leg she could not see and hit the edge of the counter with the back of her head. The sound was more wooden than he would have thought. Her legs folded, then her arms. The jasmine candle toppled and went out without doing anything as dramatic as fire. Cosmo erupted from under the table and launched himself onto the curtains, claws skittering on the plastic rings. The rod ripped out of the drywall with a puff of gypsum and came down at an angle, tangling the cat in a drape of faux linen. Derek saw the black shape thrash once, twice, then vanish under the fallen fabric. For a moment, everything in the apartment held perfectly still, like the end of a magic trick. Derek was the first thing that moved. He said her name twice, once as fact, once as plea. Elena's eyes were open enough to look like eyes but did not see anything. When he touched her face, it was warm. When he shook her shoulders, she did not answer. He pressed his ear to her chest and heard a sound he tried to call breathing. He whispered please to anyone with jurisdiction over the next 10 minutes. 1,000 times in the days to come, he would rewrite what should have happened. Call 911. Wait. Explain the wine, the chair, the cheapness of the curtain rod. Instead, he chose the stupid, selfish option that felt like a plan. Make the scene look less like a scene. Clean. Straighten. Control what could be controlled. He lifted Elena under her arms and then panicked at the weight that didn't help him lift. He slid her instead. Carpet burned under her shoulder. A smear he pretended not to see. He told himself he would move her only for a minute, just long enough to think. The linen closet yawned inches from his knee. It wasn't really a closet. It was a little utility nook the landlord had never finished properly. A rectangle with a removable panel for the building's ancient plumbing riser. 2 weeks earlier, a repair guy had opened it up to snake a clog and left a sheet of drywall leaning against the wall with a roll of mesh tape on top, promising to come back Saturday. The panel was off. The pitched darkness of the chase breathed cold air. Elena's hair had fallen into her mouth. He pushed it back with 2 fingers, terribly gentle now, and slid her into the nook. The way her arm bent made his stomach lurch. He arranged her legs in a way that was not dignified but made space for the door to close. Her face was in profile, lashes dark against her skin. He would remember the sound of the panel settling home as long as he had sounds to remember. He screwed the drywall piece back where the guy had left it, 4 screws biting into the studs with gratifying resistance. He pressed mesh over the seam, spread joint compound with a putty knife from the same forgotten toolkit. Somewhere in his body, a hand that wasn't his guided his wrist. He painted the patch with leftover eggshell white from under the sink, and watched the wet shine turn matte, as if the apartment were editing itself. By then, the apartment smelled like dust and sour gin. He opened the window. Cosmo climbed free of the curtain and shot under the bed, eyes plates of green. Derek whispered he was sorry. The cat stared, unblinking. He scrubbed the floor. He picked glass out of the wine. He taped the curtain rod up with painter's tape so the room looked less like a crime and more like an accident. He put the jasmine candle back on the counter and tried to relight it. The wick wheezed a thread of smoke and stayed dark. At dawn, he slept in his shoes. He went to work because that is the sort of thing people in trouble do. He answered emails in the voice he used for customer service, made tea for a coworker who said she liked how he always remembered, and came home with milk, as if he were still a person who came home with milk. He did not drink that night, or the next. On the 3rd night he drank, because not drinking made the walls click. Elena's phone buzzed from the shelf where she always left it. "Friends, where are you? You good? Shift swap?" Her sister, Ines. "Hey, call me." He typed as Elena, and then erased it all, and then typed again with emojis, until the messages looked like Elena. He put the phone face down, and tried not to see himself reflected in its black screen. He emptied the litter box and refilled it, as if pretending the small things might save him. Cosmo used the box the moment he poured fresh litter, then stared at Derek while he covered the mess. That look was half of what kept Derek tethered to the ground. The other half was the new wall. He checked the seam twice a day. He ran his fingertips along the line where the paint met the old paint. He pressed his ear to it more than once and held his breath. The building's heart murmured back, the slow, rusted rush of water through a riser pipe, an occasional clank from the floor above. No tapping, no voice. On the fourth night, a smell woke him. It was not yet rot. It was damp plaster and the ghost of jasmine that the patch had trapped. He opened the window and let in October. On the fifth night, Inez called again, 3 times in a row. He answered. He pitched his voice bright. He said Elena was sleeping. Work had wiped her out. He could hear the suspicion in the silence. "She hasn't answered me," Inez said finally. "Can you have her call me when she wakes?" "Of course," he said, and felt the lie catch in his throat like a fishbone. Elena did not call her sister. Derek posted a photo from Elena's camera roll of the cat asleep in a shaft of sunlight. The comments filled with hearts. He watched them accumulate like snow and felt none of it land. The week after the wall, the landlord sent a maintenance text. Water pressure checks on Thursday. Access needed to riser panel. Derek stared at the message until the words paraded. He typed back, "Panel is sealed from last repair. No access needed here." Smiley face. And wanted to throw the phone out the window for the smiley. He added, "Can you do Friday instead?" and turned his phone off. Friday came anyway. The intercom buzzed at 9. He did not answer. It buzzed again at 9:08 and 9:17. At 9:30, a knuckle rapped the green door. "Building," a voice called. "Pressure test." "Coming," Derek shouted from inside a mouth made of ash. He took 3 seconds to decide and then moved. He rolled the bookcase from the hallway and wedged it in front of the closet so that it looked heavy and inevitable and not like what it was. A blockade. He put Elena's suitcase on top of the bookcase because that felt like insurance against someone insisting. He opened the door. A thin man with a clipboard and a wrench looked bored enough to be a saint. He stepped into the bathroom, turned the sink on, turned it off, looked at nothing with authority, and left within 5 minutes. Derek pressed his forehead to the door when it closed and let himself laugh, one dry, unmusical sound. That night he did not drink. That night he heard the first tap. It was a small sound, far away in the wall, like someone had flicked a fingernail against a pipe 3 rooms over. He sat on the floor with his back against the fresh paint and told himself it was the building adjusting to cooler weather. He counted between taps the way his therapist had taught him to count between anxious breaths. He got to 30 and the tapping stopped. He fell asleep on the floor and woke with his cheeks stuck to the eggshell paint he had applied himself. On the 7th night, his phone chimed with a sound he did not recognize. He picked it up and saw a notification from the Find My app Elena had used to keep track of her stuff. A device called Cosmo was nearby. Derek frowned. Elena had joked about putting a tracker on the cat and then, apparently, had done it without telling him. Now the screen winked with a green dot inside an outline of their apartment. The dot pulsed from the hall. "Cosmo?" he called, like an idiot calling to a dot. The real cat was on the couch, eyes half-lidded. He lifted his head in the lazy insult only cats can manage and did not move. The dot pulsed again. Derek walked to the hall. The dot brightened, as if pleased. He held the phone up to the fresh paint. Within the phone, a tiny arrow spun and then locked. A chirp sounded from the wall, the 2-tone beep AirTags make when you press play sound. Something small inside the wall moved. Derek stepped back so fast he heel-kicked the baseboard. Cosmo was now fully awake, ears forward, pupils coins. The cat made a noise in the back of his throat that was not a meow and not a growl. Derek swallowed. He muted the phone. He set it on the floor. He put both hands flat on the paint, because people in movies always try to feel their way into miracles. He felt cold. He felt the vibration of pipes. He felt lightly, like thought, the brush of something that could have been fur. "Not possible," he said out loud to the empty apartment. "Cosmo's here." He pointed at the cat with a hand that wasn't steady. Cosmo stared at the wall. He went to the kitchen and poured the rest of the hard seltzer down the sink. He did not like the sound it made. He deleted the Find My notification, and then undeleted it, and then stared at it, and then, because he couldn't not, pressed play sound again. The chirp rang from inside the wall, cheerful and clinical. The cat hissed. The tapping started up in rhythm with his panic. At 2:03 a.m. the intercom buzzed. He jumped so hard his hip hit the counter. He stared at the speaker as if it had called his name. Then it buzzed again, and he had to answer. Because the only thing worse than an intercom at 2 a.m. is not answering an intercom at 2 a.m. "This is NYPD, a voice said, already bored. "We're conducting a welfare check for a resident, Elena Cardenas. Are you Derek Flynn?" His mouth moved before thought could catch it. "Yes." "Ms. Cardenas' sister asked us to stop by. She hasn't heard from Elena in a week. We buzzed earlier, but no one let us in. Can we speak with you?" He pressed the button that unlocks the lobby door while his brain tried to reverse time. He moved the bookcase 2 inches and then moved it back, and then placed the suitcase on the floor, because surely a suitcase on a bookcase says nothing. He picked up Cosmo, and Cosmo kicked and scratched hard enough to leave traces. 2 officers and a woman in a hoodie and pajama pants appeared at the green door. The woman was Inez, and grief had inflated her eyes. "Where is she?" she asked, already walking past him. "Asleep," he lied. "She's had migraines." Inez walked straight to the bedroom and turned on the light like she had paid for the electricity. The bed was made the way Elena made beds, flat as a lake. The officers did a professional circle of the rooms. One of them glanced at the kitchen, the other at the hall. The cat made himself big in the doorway. Derek kept talking because that is what he knows how to do. "We had a fight," he said, "because truth wears better than complete lies. She needed space. She's been on her phone though. She posted the cat photo." He pointed at the sea of hearts on Elena's page. He willed the hearts to be evidence of life. Inez didn't look. She was holding her own phone high, as if dowsing for signal. A chirp answered her from somewhere that was not the speaker in her hand. She tilted her head and stared at the wall with the new paint. The chirp sounded again, bright, twice. She looked at Derek like he had offered her poison. She put an air tag on Cosmo, Inez said to the officers without dragging her eyes from him. "I can ping it." She pressed her screen. The wall answered. The officers moved as a single idea. "Step back, sir," the tall one said, very calm. He had the voice of a teacher in a fire drill. Derek obeyed, because a lifetime of teachers had trained him to. The shorter officer knelt and pressed his ear to the paint. He did not need to pretend. The tapping had decided to be brave. It ticked, it scuffled, it made the sound of small claws on drywall. "It's a cat," Derek said, and heard the pleading in it. "It's obviously just." "You said the cat was here," Inez said, voice like a basement. Cosmo chose that moment to vanish under the couch, as if following a cue. The tapping in the wall answered his movement, as if answering a cue from something else entirely. Inez did not yell. She did not accuse. She simply nodded to the officers as if completing math. The taller one radioed for the super. The shorter one said, "Do you consent to us removing this panel?" Derek's mouth had gone dry. He wanted to say no. He wanted 1,000 other minutes. He wanted the week before back, and the week before that, where the jokes were still good. He heard his voice say, "Yes," like he was giving a password. The taller officer already had a pry bar. The first pull tore the paint. The second pulled half the sheet clean. The third opened the apartment's throat. Smell hit first, sweet and swallowed, trapped jasmine, and a dampness that had learned another name. Behind the drywall, the chase was a rectangle the size of a human body. Inside, a white nightgown folded wrong. Hair in a black river. Elena's shoulder rounded like a planet. Her face turned away, but it did not matter which direction Elena looked now. The AirTag chirped one more time, muffled and then bright, from the hollow where her hand was pressed against her chest. For a half second, Derek thought Elena had put it there, and then he saw the strip of elastic caught under her fingers, the cat collar. A black shape moved against her rib cage and lifted its head. Cosmo, thin as a line, crawled toward the light. One eye looked wrong, filmed from the curtain accident or from the dark, but he was alive, and when he saw Derek, he made a sound that deserved to be called a word. The officers did everything they had been trained to do: radios, tape, hands on shoulders. Someone spoke into Derek's face and asked him to breathe, and he tried, but breath was a past tense in that room. Ines folded herself to the floor just outside the circle and did not cry. Derek watched the cat step over Elena's arm and onto the sill of the broken wall, and then, inexplicably, paused to rub his face against the new paint. Later, in a room with no windows and a camera that winked a red dot, Derek told the detective that he hadn't meant to hurt anyone. He told the story out of order. He said the words he had rehearsed, and then he said other words that surprised him with how easily they came. The detective listened like a doctor who has seen the same wound in 40 different bodies. When Derek's voice cracked on the part with the pry bar, the detective slid a paper cup of water across the table without looking like he was doing something kind. "Why didn't you call?" the detective asked finally. "I was afraid," Derek said, which was both a dumb answer and the only true one. "I thought I could fix it. I fix things at work all the time. You just delete and moderate and it goes away." He laughed without meaning to. It sounded like a sob started wrong. It didn't go away. The detective nodded. Then he turned an iPad so the screen faced Derek. "These are the device logs for the AirTag on the cat's collar," he said. Rows of timestamps glowed. Play sound, 2:14, 2:16, 2:19, and on. Your Apple ID pinged it 6 times across 2 nights. The pings came from your phone. From inside your apartment. Derek stared until the numbers became a field of snow. "I didn't know," he said. It sounded like a child's answer. "The medical examiner's prelim says she didn't die on impact," the detective continued, voice even. "Blunt force followed by asphyxia. There's bruising on her wrists from trying to push. Under the nails. Paint. Eggshell white." He clicked his pen closed and sat back. "She was alive for a while in there, long enough to hear you press play." Something inside Derek tipped, and never righted. He thought of the cheerful chirp coming from the wall, of Cosmo's hiss, of his own palm flat against cooling paint. He laced his fingers together to keep them from shaking, and found white dust still in the cuticles he had missed. "You understand," the detective said, "that even if you hadn't consented, we would have opened that wall." "How?" "Welfare check. Exigent circumstances, a tag chirping from inside a sealed chase," the detective said mildly. "Technology's neat like that." He let the sentence sit there like a weight. Derek looked at his hands. He had washed them a dozen times, but they looked like work he would not finish in one lifetime. "Neat," he said, and the word broke in the middle. In the transport van, Derek pressed his forehead to the cool metal and watched a sliver of city slide by through the grill. Everything was rectangles. Windows, buses, the evidence bag hanging on a hook with the cat collar and the tag inside, the outline of the gap in his wall. At a red light, the van idled beside a mural of a woman releasing a bird. The paint flaked from the bird's wings as if it were molting into the street. At the precinct loading bay, Ines stood under the fluorescence with a pet carrier at her feet. Cosmo sat inside, 2 eyes like coins, unblinking. For a second, the van's motion lined Derek's face and the cat's up perfectly, as if the metal and glass wanted them to look at each other. The cat did not blink. Derek did. A tiny chime sounded from the evidence bag when the van jolted over a pothole. Bright, silly, impossible. No one else reacted. The driver cursed the road. Derek closed his eyes and saw the iPad's list of times, each one a doorway he had chosen not to open. He can say he never meant to hurt anything that breathed. He can swear it until his tongue dries out. But the printout of the logs will have his name at the top. and the paint beneath Elena's nails will not wash from memory, and the ping will follow him into every room he is given. At night, when he tries to sleep on a mattress thin as paper, the steel will carry sound, and from somewhere inside the vents, a bright little chirp will answer him, once, twice, like a life he could have touched and didn't. And when he dreams, and he will dream because sleep finds everyone eventually, the wall will always open, and the little green dot will not blink like a beacon anymore, but like a pulse he let run out.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.